Games have been around for 50 years now, ever since the first Pong game hit the world by a storm, and Tetris took over soon afterwards. Super Mario Bros. Is what revitalized the genre into a fun platforming world, and Street Fighter brought the fighting game genre into our everyday Atari home consoles. Games have managed to stay with us despite everything, even in COVID-19 when the rest of the world came to a halt. The gaming industry managed to make a ton of bank anyways. Games are the one medium which will always remain potent, and so it's always incredibly fun to look back on some of the games which brought our attentions to the gaming industry and made us think about games as a medium of entertainment. This is our nostalgic list of the top 10 games that every 90s kid will remember and cherish forever. Number 10. Mortal Kombat. At the number 10 spot, it is the incredibly controversial Mortal Kombat. The game brought a brand new way of playing fighting games, and an incredibly modern, gory, and twist to the often colorless and mild genre of games. Mortal Kombat had near lifelike graphics back in the day, with real-life motion capture and incredibly scary fatalities. The game was so full of gut-wrenching, blood-pumping gore that it was outright banned in several countries and started the conversation about how games could have a bad influence on the younger generations, which is a boring way to put it since the game was marked as 18+. And if any kids are playing it, then it's their parents' fault anyways. Mortal Kombat brought incredibly fun storylines along with a revolutionizing take on the fighting game genre. Number 9. Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot was Sony's answer to the 3D Mario games that made Nintendo a worldwide phenomenon. Crash Bandicoot was such an endearing series. Sony's work on the Crash Bandicoot games brought a whole new level of accomplishment within the platforming action-adventure genre, and laid the foundations for what would come afterwards. Crash Bandicoot was one of the earliest examples of 3D platforming done right, with a ton of levels that would often frustrate players, yet reward them upon conquering the game. The game was so good that it has managed to remain a relevant franchise to this day. Even in 2021, Sony's remakes of these games are selling like hotcakes. Number 8. Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog was Sega's take on the platforming action-adventure genre. They revamped the slow and calculated movement of platformers to a fast-paced, chaotic rhythm-based game, which revitalized the genre. In doing so, Sega had created one of the most popular franchises that the gaming world had ever seen. Sonic became such an iconic and popular character that he became Sega's spearhead for future endeavors. And the level of quality that came with these games, whether it was in the level design, the movement, or the stories they told, became a standard in the gaming industry. Everyone was playing Sonic back when it launched on the Sega home consoles. Sonic is still so famous to this day, with him being part of countless gaming collaborations with Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, as well as getting his own Hollywood blockbuster film, which was actually a really decent family fun movie. Before we continue with one of the first horror shooter games, make sure you hit the like button to fully support us. Number 7. Resident Evil 2. 1998. Resident Evil 2 is the first horror game that terrified audiences without any hesitation. The story it created with the two main protagonists having different playthroughs was revolutionary at the time, and the graphics were state-of-the-art in 1998. The game also had some of the wildest jump scares that the industry had seen yet to date. It had no competition, and as such took over the market completely, into becoming Capcom's most beloved series, even beating Street Fighter. Leon and Claire became standout characters, with Mr. X becoming a villain to behold. The game recently received a remake in 2019, which was beloved by both fans and critics, being known as one of the first remakes to truly capture the spirit of the original. Number 6. Tekken 3. Tekken 3. What could we say about Tekken that hasn't already been said? Tekken 3 changed the way 3D fighting games were created at the time, putting the focus on a completely three-dimensional environment, where you could dodge hits by going sideways, backwards, and ducking or jumping. Additionally, Tekken 3 also introduced the concept of separate stories for each character in the game, with fully voiced and motion-captured cinematics to give them a whole storyline. It shook the world by becoming the first fighting game that would have an incredibly powerful esports scene. Number 5. Need for Speed Underground 2. Need for Speed Underground 2 is one for the late 90s kids, and man, is it a good game. Need for Speed Underground 2 had the largest collection of cars that the world had seen to date. Back when it released in 2004, it had incredibly realistic graphics as well as some of the best customization options for cars that completely changed the way you would drive a car. It came with many different modes and had a sprawling open world to drive around in, if you weren't in the mood for any races. The game also managed to accumulate a huge amount of money in sales, sending EA stocks skyrocketing, and turning Need for Speed into a prize series that EA wouldn't give up on anytime soon. Number 4. Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Grand Theft Auto Vice City was the truly next-generational jump that Rockstar Games committed to after Grand Theft Auto 3 Liberty City. Unlike Liberty City's drab colors and boring characters, Vice City introduced a colorful, bustling Vice City, which was inspired by the Miami of the late 1980s. The main character, Tommy Vercetti, was iconic. The setting was glorious, and each of the characters stood out and were different from each other. The story of how Tommy climbs the ranks in the Miami drug cartel and takes over the entirety of Vice City, and eventually gets betrayed by those he called friends, was one that resonated a whole lot with a ton of people. Vice City was truly a masterpiece when it launched, and it's still one of those games that is sometimes played by people if they're looking for some quick mayhem. Number 3. Halo Combat Evolved. Halo Combat Evolved is the game that brought multiplayer shooters to the actual limelight. While there were a ton of multiplayer shooters even back when Halo Combat Evolved launched, Halo Combat Evolved's spin to it was large maps with more than 20 players in the same lobby playing against each other, which gave the games a gigantic war-like feeling. The game also had one of the most dazzling campaigns at the time, introducing Microsoft's mascot, Master Chief, as he fought against a plethora of alien forces trying to take over planet Earth and the human fleets overall. Halo Combat Evolved paved the way for games like Call of Duty and Battlefield, creating technologies that would later be used by these games and war simulation games. Number 2. Half-Life. Half-Life was Valve's first attempt at creating a truly lovable single-player game. Whereas most of their other games have remained multiplayer or at the very least co-op experiences, Half-Life was a completely single-player story-driven experience. We play as Gordon Freeman, who works at the Black Mesa Industries tech division and is greeted by an unfathomable surprise attack by an alien species which takes over the industry. This was the very first game that introduced the concept of immersion in video games and has managed to retain itself as the founder of this concept. The game also kick-started the industry's love for single-player first-person shooter games. Number 1. Mario 64. Mario, the one game that paved the way for every single action-adventure and platformer game out there. Mario 64 is the one game that will always resonate with every single 90s kid. The game had an insanely well-made catalog of characters, a giant open hub world, which would reward you for exploration, and dozens of levels that you could go through on your own pacing. The game was so good that it was played by everyone on release. Even those unfamiliar with games know the name of Mario, and 64 had a huge part in that popularity. Nintendo became a worldwide sensation because of Mario 64, which truly put them on the charts as the best 3D game developers in the world at the time. The levels were smartly designed, the boss fights were fun and unique, the world was colorful and fun to explore because it was so rewarding. The movement was fluid, and Mario felt like he had weight to his jumps and spins. Every once in a while, a level would throw a curveball at you and give you something unexpected to do, like going off an ice slide or seeing a sea monster and climbing on top of it. Mario 64 is truly one of those games that defines a generation and fuels nostalgia unlike any other game. Alright guys, this was our list of the top 10 games that every 90s kid has played. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Click on the bell icon to turn notifications on, and comment what you would like to see more from us in the future. Bye!